Agora eu vou chamar a nossa próxima apresentadora, a doutora Roberta Ferrito. É uma arqueóloga especializada na história arquitetônica ambiental e socioeconômica do mundo romano. Atualmente, ela é pesquisadora financiada pelo programa Marie Curie e investigadora principal do projeto Paisagens Costeiras e Vilas Marítimas Romanas, um estudo regional comparativo de modelos arquitetônicos e configurações ambientais, financiado pela União Europeia e desenvolvido nas universidades de Bolonha e Pensilvânia. Trabalhou como investigadora assistente na Universidade de Kiel e na Universidade de Reading, onde também foi conferencista durante o seu doutorado. Ela completou seu bacharelado na Universidade de Florença e fez mestrado em arqueologia na Universidade La Sapienza de Roma, seguido ainda por um mestrado em arquitetura. Doutora Ferrito participou de trabalhos de campo arqueológicos por quase 2 décadas na Itália e na Tunísia e atualmente é especialista em arquitetura antiga do projeto Casa della Carolina, em Pompeia. Então, depois dessa introdução, eu gostaria de convidar a doutora Roberta Ferrito para a apresentação.
Thank you, Caroline, for your introduction, and good morning, everyone. Let me thanks once again, Viviana and Professor Margarita for inviting me. And so I'm going to show the screen. Okay. Can you see it? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So today in my talk, I'm going to present the key role that coastal villas played in the coastal landscape between the 2 regions of Latium and Campania, which is the geographic area where the maritime villa architectural typologies was originated and perfected. So we know that from the 2nd century BC, there was a great construction boom of luxury maritime villas spread gradually along the Italian coasts. And between the southern Latium on the north and Campania to the south, we have a great concentration of luxury maritime villas. So that the point is equivalent to the most crowded seaside cities on Earth today. In the Roman Peninsula, Italian Peninsula, the significant concentration of this kind of villas modify the coastal profile. And especially in the Tyrrhenian area, it's possible to see that structures were either cut directly into the bedrock or adapted to the natural profile of the cliffs. This intensive building activity led to a progressive demographic, socioeconomic, and environmental change. And maritime villas are very important for understanding the development of ancient coastal urbanization and architectural forms, the interaction between humans and the environment, and the use of natural resources. So today, I'm going to give you a very brief historical background about the maritime villas and the comparisons between the 2 regions, so Southern Latium and Campania. And then I will move to present you the architectural models and which are the prevailing trends in the 2 regions. And so looking at their interaction between architecture and the natural environment. Then I will move on the role that these kind of villas had in local economy, especially focusing on the artificial fish ponds, which are a peculiar building of maritime villas, especially in the Tyrrhenian coast. And finally, I will present you the situation in the rest of the Mediterranean basin and outline my actual program that I'm working on. So let's define a maritime villa. Maritime villa is generally defined as an elegant villa which can be located in the right on the waterfront or in close proximity to the shoreline. It was formed by different parts that could include residential quarters, production areas, storerooms, and including the pars maritima, which are structures built directly in the water, so in the seawater. Here I show you some examples of maritime villas directly built on the waterfront, such as the Tiberius Villa in Sperlonga. And another famous villa is Villa Iovis, which is another Tiberius Villa on Capri Island, which is instead built on a high cliff. The construction of maritime villas along the Italian coast started during the mid-2nd century BC. It coincides with the conquest of the Hellenistic East. And from the Hellenistic world, the Roman the elite Roman, acquired a taste for luxury and otium. Soon enough start a competition to own one or more than one maritime villa because they became a status symbol for members of the elite society of the Roman world. There was an increase in number of maritime villas and research in trendy places because they wanted to have the most unique villas on the most beautiful place in the empire. And also they took advantage of specialized engineering solutions because, of course, including the unique of these structures required high quality specialized engineering works. And in these villas, social activities included dinners, political meetings, and holiday sojourns. And that's why it was important to have one or more than one maritime villa because it meant to be part of a social network made of important people. If we think about maritime villas, usually we think about Campania. So Campania came in mind first because it's most famous for the maritime villas close Pompeii, Herculaneum, the Bay of Naples, etc. And so one can think that Campania is the place where maritime villa originated. Instead, and this is also came from the ancient sources. And here we have two examples of ancient sources that mention maritime villas of the 2nd century BC. But actually, if we are going to compare the two regions, so Southern Latium and Campania, the situation is completely different on the basis of archaeological data, of course. And we see that at the very beginning of the 2nd century BC, the coast of Southern Latium had 16 sites, while Campania had just 4. And later, in the period running from the second half of the 2nd century BC to the mid-1st century BC, the territory of the Southern Latium shows its largest diffusion of maritime villas, with the presence of 63 sites, while in Campania only 20. And from the second half of the 1st century BC, we start to see an equal number, and it's about the Augustan age that there is a clear evidence of numerous villas in Campania, with the construction of 73 new villas, instead in Southern Latium just 14. So the primacy of Southern Latium is also because the first maritime villas were placed where the ancient colonial maritima were placed, so the ancient coastal settlements. So there was already the people of this colony already know how to live on the coast, so it was easy for them to build structures. It became a crowded shoreline, of course, Southern Latium, and this is also attested from ancient sources, as for instance, Cicero says that his villa in Formia. It was no more a house, but it compared it as a basilica. So the gradual migration to the south in the Campania started in the mid-Republic, and this is because Campania satisfied new requirements. First of all, it was in close proximity to commercial strategic places like Puteoli, had landscape requirements because the beauty of the landscape was amazing and the climate was nice. And also it had socio-political advantages because it was possible to stay in the same location as the emperor and his court, because we know that many emperors has villas in Campania. But even in Campania, we have the same situation as in southern Latium. In fact, we see that at some point the coastline was completely covered by maritime villas, luxury maritime villas, and was so difficult to do a difference between even a town to another, which is basically the situation that we can see also nowadays, and I will show you later. So explained, given a background about maritime villas, now let's move on the architectural models that we have in Latium, in Campania, and the interaction between architecture and natural environment. So if we look at the most trend, the typology used in southern Latium is the pavilion typology, which is a maritime, which is a villa basically made by different building units, which could be connected to each other by stairs or tunnels or etc. And they could be also placed on different levels, so different terraces. Here we have an example of pavilion villa, which is the Villa of Giulia on Ventotene Island, which is located on a promontory, Punta Eolo, and it's a villa dated to the first century BC. And this huge villa has the pars rustica, so the production area on the south. In the middle, there are the area occupied by etc. and corridors, etc., and garden. And on the north, we have the residential area. In this case, the promontory has been not so modified. So the architect was able to adjust the buildings along the natural morphology of the promontory. Another villa, pavilion villa, is the Villa Gianola in Formia. And this is a villa made by different building units spread along a promontory and with different orientations. And so again, the man adapted the constructions to the natural morphology of the ancient settings, coastal setting. And in this case, we also see how the engineering was able to work on hard rock, as calcareous rock, because the one building to another is connected by a tunnel, calcareous tunnel, which was not very easy to cut. So the pavilion villa was the typology most famous in Latium, and among the numerous villas, so we have more than 100 maritime villas just in southern Latium. A unique typology is that of the Nero's villa in Anzio, which is a villa that at the beginning there were 3 different dwellings on the same place, and when the palace, the Nero's villas was built, these 3 ancient dwellings were incorporated into the new villa. And there is a semicircle facade which run along the coastal profile of the cliff, and it runs for about 700 meters. But in the area of Southern Latium, the most used architectural model, which cannot be identified as a typology per se, but of course is an architectural model, are the maritime villas built on substructures. Substructures were engineering solutions made to regularize the slope of land according to the needs of the space where it would be built. And they created the multiple levels on which the terrace of the villa were built. So one could have a villa made by different terraces and overlooking the sea. This substructure could be made by closed rooms or open rooms. And in case of open rooms, they were made by vaulted rooms. The space could be occupied by by buildings or areas with a certain level of decor. And here I'm going to give you some examples, as for instance at the Villa Fontania in Gaeta, which is a maritime villas, terraced maritime villa dated to the second early century BC, and the basis villa are the substructures are built into the natural bedrock. In some cases, we have also cut from 4 to 2 meters high. The substructures were in front of luxury fish ponds, and in front of these fish ponds there was a round structure that, in my opinion, was a monumental fountain. And we will see that it's quite common to have water features in front of fish ponds, which were part of the villa building. Not so far from Gaeta, there is another famous villa, the so-called Cicero villas, which is dated to the end of 2nd century BC. And this villa is a terrace villas, and whose substructures were occupied by structures and 2 rooms show a beautiful nymphaeum. The so-called small nymphaeum and large nymphaeum that are well decorated. And today it's still possible to visit them. And not so far from here, so in the other, where there are Grotte di Sant'Erasmo, there are other substructures that, in my opinion, were part of the same villa complex. And if we enter in one of these vaulted room, there is another decorated room with beautiful stucco ceiling vault. So again, we have a villa with an nymphaeum in front of a fish pond, because also this villa had a fish pond. The last example is Villa La Saracca Chiesola, which is placed in Nettuno. And this villa is completely covered by sand dunes and vegetation. But if we passed one of these spots, we can find a vaulted room which is almost filled with sun, but it was a decorated room. So still again another nymphaeum, and in front of the fish pond. So in my opinion, we can see that the nymphaeum, which was here, the vaulted room, is exactly on the same axle of the fish pond. And in my opinion, it was planned from the very beginning, because we have to think that the view of this beautiful maritime villa could be seen from who approached the villa from the sea. So the view, people could admire the beauty of the villa, as well as this nymphaeum with the water jet that for an optical illusion could fall into the fish pond. So there was an interplay between all the structures. The impact of maritime villas on the Campanian territory is more evident, and substantial differences are not evident between Southern Latium and the Campania. However, we can see that in Campania there are more maritime villas built exactly on the cliffs, because Campania doesn't have so many beaches as Southern Latium. So the impact of this structure is more evident, as for instance at the Villa del Capo di Sorrento, which is a villa built exactly on the cliff without substructures. Then another villa which is not built on a high cliff but modified the natural coastal profile. And Villa Iovis on Capri Island, which was on a high cliff, very high cliff, from which was possible to see of the Bay of Naples. And the Villa Arianna in Stabie, which is dated to the mid-1st century AD, and it's built exactly on a high cliff. So this structure had great impact on the coastal settings. So as we have seen in the central Tyrrhenian area, the substructure, the maritime villas completely modify the coastal profile, but at the same time they try to respect the nature when possible, of course, because there was this interplay between nature and structures. Okay, now let's move on the economic role that maritime villas had in the local economy, because we have to think that they were not just only luxury villas for the enjoyment of holidays, etc., but they can be also involved in the production and in local market demand, and they could be involved in the production of olive oil, wine, or the production of amphora, bricks, etc. One of the peculiar characteristic of maritime villas is the presence of luxury artificial fish ponds. Again, artificial fish ponds were made to improve the beauty of the maritime villa, because they were expensive structures, and at the same time they were used for fish, for breeding fish. From a construction point of view, the seawater marine fish ponds came in two different forms. There were artificial growth, there were fish ponds built in artificial grottos, and those open to the air. And here I give you some examples. I'm going fast because I don't know if I have time. So there is a beautiful fish pond on Ponce Island, which is obtained from natural grottos. And here we have a natural fish pond, which is small, but still it's a fish pond. It's on Zannone Island. And then we have the open air typology, which is the most famous on the Tyrrhenian coast, at least in the central Tyrrhenian coast. And if we see, for instance, the small town of Nettuno, along about 10 kilometers of coastline, there are at least 6 fish ponds. 3 of them nowadays are no more visible, the first 3 on the left. But those on the right are still visible, and they all have different design. They were made by different tanks, which were connected to each other by channels, and this channel could lead fresh water into the tanks, and at the same time could allow fish to go from a tank to another. In Formia, the losange shape is the most common one, and here we have an example. Another one is the Largo Domenico Paone Villa. And then we have unique and beautiful, original, let's say, design, as that found at the Tiberius Villa in Sperlonga. And the other one in San Felice Circeo, Torre del Fico, with these round tanks. So part of my job, of my work research has been to quantify the labor costs for the construction of these fish ponds, and at the same time the construction of the production capacity. And this has been possible thanks to the 3D reconstruction of fish ponds, because it allowed me to understand how much concrete I needed to build the fish ponds, and at the same time how much cubic meters of water were into the tanks. I applied a theoretical methodology already applied by other sources, the this project basically tried to understand how much man-hours of work were required to build a cubic meter of hydraulic concrete. So I applied the same type methodology to my fish ponds, and at the end, I calculated how many hours needed to be built the different fish ponds. Of course, it's an hypothesis because there are many factors. First of all, we don't know how many men they could have. Second, if they work at all the days, how many hours, and for 7 days in a week. But is an hypothesis. Same methodology has been applied to quantify the production capacity of this fish pond. And so we know that a pond with a volume of 1,000 square meters could hold about 1.5 kilos of fish. So I applied the theoretical hypothesis approach of Marzano and Brizzi to my fish ponds, and have seen that half of the fish ponds in Southern Latium were about 800 square meters and 1,000 square meters. So they were involved in the local market demand. How we have seen from this long list of images, there has been an impact on the coastal central Tyrrhenian coasts of Latium and Campania. And here we have two images that represent the situation in the past. But if we look at the present, we have the same situation, because if we go in, I don't know how many of you already have been in Naples or in Campania, but if you observe the territory, you see that there is a large construction of structures on the territory. So it came into my mind if can we define this a tradition of illegal building? Because I mean, we have modern buildings on ancient buildings, and there is always over the century the construction and reconstruction of buildings on the same spots and right on the beach or in waterfront, etc. So it could be nice, I mean, it could be important to understand that there is this kind of tradition from the past. If we move into the Mediterranean Sea, we have the same situation, because maritime villas from the Italian peninsula spread to the rest of the Mediterranean basin. And for instance, in the North Africa, in the territory of Leptis Magna, in the ancient Tripolitania, we have about 20 maritime villas along the coast. These villas has some features similar to the maritime villas in southern Latium and Campania. And even here in North Africa, for instance, at the villa of the Maritime Odeon, we have structures that in part modify the natural coastal profile, and in part were adapted to the natural morphology, as we can see the Odeon. The tendency was exactly the same. An overall study of the architecture of Roman villas in the Mediterranean regions and how they impacted and were shaped by the local environments and the research project. It's the research project that I'm carrying out. And this project basically wants to determine the typology, the different typologies of maritime villas developed in the Mediterranean basin, and to look at the interaction between these structures and the natural environment. In my opinion, if we look at the Italian peninsula as well as the Mediterranean basin, the environments occupied by the ancient maritime villas are seriously impacted by damages, modern damages, such as any climate change, catastrophes, or human disasters. So it's very important to document these villas because it's, at least in a documentary way, because it's the only way to document our past. And also it's important to find a way to preserve the cultural heritage of the ancient cultural heritage, and to find communication with authorities, local authorities, to better preserve the heritage and to promote it. Okay, I finished. Thank you so much.